Hello, Cardstack community. My name is Chrissy, the founding director of the Cardstack project, coming to you from the land of the Web3. Today, we're going to spend our focus talking about brand and loyalty and how they can adopt Web3 technology. And we're so thrilled to be joined by DigitalBits CEO Daniele Mensi to talk to us about his project and his approach to bring mass market adoption, but not by focusing on technology, but focusing on the use case and how we can bring people who want to connect with each other with brands and being ability to connect in a more organic way beyond the technology jumble. So welcome, Daniele.
Thank you, Chris, for having me here. It's a great pleasure talking about a subject I love the most.
It's amazing to look at a project that's really focused outwards and not talking to 100 people. It seems like 100 people talking mostly on Twitter, but really kind of going out there and extending our hand of welcome to people who are curious about this technology as a tool to expand the business, to build their community, and to engage consumers, and maybe in some cases even turning them into producers in a way that's more deeply engaged. So can you tell me a little bit about the project and like what your focus is, and why have you kind of found the niche that you're the blockchain for brands?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the first, I would say, setting the scene and the first question. So DigitalBits blockchain is a layer one. So it's a technology which is so-called blockchain, and which has the goal to create the so-called brand economy in the blockchain space, in the Web3, which I would say in simple terms, it creates an environment, a technology environment, and an ecosystem of products and application, which is specifically designed for brands to engage with their consumers with peace of mind. So we want to get things simple in a very complicated world, which is the technology of a blockchain.
Right. And so, brands has been experimenting with the different technology. I can see in the technology kind of hype map, different year have different technology come in and out. And I'm sure the focus was Web3 and NFT, and maybe still is. And some other focus will be AI and chatbots and stuff like that. So now when it comes to loyalty, there's a really good fit between the type of mechanism for measurement, for reward, for currency, like instrument for redemption. How do you see brands looking when they come to a blockchain application with the understanding of loyalty as it currently exists in mind? What is the first reaction they have when you say, hey, you can actually do this on a blockchain?
So first of all, I would say there is a resistance to kind of associate the brands to a technology which is still in a kind of discovery phase when it comes down to mainstream perception. So there is a first step of okay, we need to better understand the why and the what. So and the timing of which a brand considered to use it and eventually design a roadmap to get into it. It's very different from which it's commonly known and perceived by crypto stakeholders. And I'll just give an example. So at DigitalBits, we have a completed integration with a major brand, which has 900 retail stores. And then we have announced that the integration was done and we were ready to go to market, I think back in March, something like this. But the brand internally had some steps to follow prior going live. And these steps sometimes, as in this case, it might take some months. And this is something new for people in crypto, saying, hey, you have announced something and it did not materialize the next day. The time on which brands do steps, especially when it comes down to enter into a new and potentially disruptive technology, it's very different from the time which people in crypto are have habits to work. So this means, first of all, the time. It's a key element because it takes more time when it comes down to big corporate and big organization, multi-billion brands.
For sure, yeah.
They don't do things the next month. So this means they might have a roadmap to start this in 6 months' time, 6 to 12 months' time. In between, the crypto landscape might have changed. There might be some narrative that comes along, which might create some pushback. So trying to create an environment where there is a full alignment on all the planets in this galaxy, it is very important. So at the end of the day, it is true that blockchain envision a trustless economy, but unfortunately, economy works on trust.
Absolutely. And internally as well, is you talk about alignment and planet between the ecosystem, but if you think about a particular company, it is its own satellite and moon. It's almost aligning on the moons of Saturn's just by itself, just to align everything else, because, there are different organizations and fiefdom from PR to technology to compliance. Those need to be aligned as well.
Yeah, so I would say the word is a little bit more complicated. Versus the way we want to summarize and depict. And specifically when it comes down to having brand adoptions, Web3 and crypto. So there's a lot of work to be done behind the scene, which is not sexy, but there's a lot of hours and hours to be spent explaining how all these things works. And at the end of the day, brands are really, really careful about their reputation and any type of negative impact to the brand. Obviously, it's something that really matters the most for them. So coming back to your original question, I would say time is a key component of brands, time and having a roadmap, meaning a timely agenda on when you do what, and provide kind of a peace of mind when it comes down to all the technology aspects. So the more you have to build from scratch, the more resistance you find on the other side. So to me, one of the key success factors is that everything from a technology standpoint should already working, and someone else should have already done it. So this means, in this case, it's a peace of mind.
So it's mostly an implementation and a connection to the business model, to the kind of operational modality and stuff like that. So what of the kind of brand angle? Now, obviously, loyalty are different aspects of it. Most obviously, loyalty points, a type of branded currency. There are maybe membership statuses and stuff like that comes with loyalty program. And obviously, there's redemption of goods. And obviously, there's also a kind of gating membership to say, hey, only people of this particular qualification gets that. That's my kind of like layman's term of understanding loyalty. And obviously, you also see like proof of purchase, ability to accumulate type of purchase history, some of them represented by NFT. Are you seeing similar patterns or certain aspects of that it is much more easy to get your first foot in within the brand landscape?
Yeah, I try to simplify because this is somehow new and it is very, very focused and very, very related to the technology that we're building. So think about the way today you join a loyalty program and the way you redeem whatever reward you might earn out of the participation into some program, okay? Think about the way you join and the way you earn. Those two phases are very clunky because when you join, you have to enroll, you have to subscribe with an email. Eventually, you have to have an SMS or push notification which quantify, which verify, blah, blah, blah. So there are multiple steps. And also when you redeem a reward, which eventually involve another brand, it might be a partner, then it creates a lot of touch points, emails back and forth. You might get lost in translation somehow in the process. So the way this has been envisioned within the DigitalBits, I would say mission, which is to redefine the so-called loyalty economy and the brand economy, is that so there is a wallet, and that's an assumption because we need to make the assumption that people will have a wallet, and that's the first assumption, provided that they have motivation to do so. The wallet is a digital container of a piece of value, either might be cryptocurrency, might be fungible, non-fungible tokens, and anything you keep custody within the wallet itself. The moment you want to earn or redeem, you do everything in the same wallet because the wallet contains value and transfer values. And there are many, many key benefits in doing so. But the first one is that the interaction between a wallet and an application, and a brand in this case, does not involve the processing of personal data. So we redefine also the way consumers are being profiled, because at the end of the day, as long as you have a public key, which is the wallet address in simple terms, then you start engaging with a key which contains element of value, which is more valuable than the personal data themselves, because at the end of the day, over there are tokens, there are NFTs, which have value. So even though brands might not know who is the person, the advantage of security and safety for personal data in favor of the consumers, then they can really handle this with peace of mind and get a better experience to clients, to consumers, and at the end of the day, reward them more and more efficiently.
That makes a lot of sense. I think the idea from a user point of view, seeing the asset being protected by a wallet and seeing that ownership kind of like transcend, if you interact with multiple brands, it could be the same wallet and stuff like that, really makes sense for the users and the owner of this loyalty program. From a brand point of view, a lot of brands will push you to install the apps. Like sometimes I've seen people like fumble around their phones and say, hey, do you want to get 15% off? And then they just stand there in the cash registers for like 10 minutes trying to download through crappy Wi-Fi and stuff like that. How do you see this idea of wallet intersect with the app investment that companies are making within their brands? Like Nike has an app, every like major international brand has an app. Do you see wallet functionality going in there, or do you see extension of that capability into a separate wallet?
Well, I would say I can answer in a twofold manner. For me, the future is interoperable. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether you have app A or you have app B, which is integrated with a blockchain. Because at the end of the day, every brand wants to kind of customize or tailor their brand experience. And at the end of the day, consumers should feel, in the environment that the brand has built. So I don't imagine that every brand will use someone else's app. I rather expect that they will integrate within their own app kind of processors and systems, which will allow them to extend the footprints to Web3, to the Web3 environment in a kind of, let's say, white label fashion. At the end, there will be an integration, a piece of integration where will be completely masked in their brand experience, and which at the end of the day will land on a Web3. So this is
it makes sense because that information exists outside of their database, but it can be presented with the type of integration within the look and feel and the language while within the app, but still accessible by a more general purpose wallet that's more kind of user-centric and user-friendly.
So technology is ready to scale from a different angles, not only in terms of speed processing, so vertically, but it's much more, I would say the focus of the things we're doing, DigitalBits Foundation, is more about how can we really tailor the user experience, because the bottom part, it's kind of commoditized from the perception of the brand and the consumers. Yes. They want to transfer coins, they want to do it without fees, they want to have a precise confirmation timing of the transactions. All of these, in the eyes of a consumer, is not sexy. It doesn't change much. But it has to be there. And it kind of
table stakes for certain type of use cases, right? Like the certain use case can take a $10 fee loyalty. I mean, the loyalty point transfer may not be worth the $10 fee to transfer. So
to me, the paradigm shift here is that so this technology is designed to build value and redistribute this value throughout loyalty and rewards. So this means the concept, the philosophy of this is a little bit more deeper than it seems. Because if you do see the way, I would say, rewards program work in crypto, typically the rewards program essentially reduce the value of the technology that is being used. And I'm not talking about the coin itself, because if I give something for free, I don't increase the value. I rather decrease the value. I might increase adoption, yes, but at the beginning, when I distribute rewards, something free or a discount, I'm reducing the value. So I need to prove that this kind of reduction in value has, on the other side, an increase in adoption and increase in value from another side. And the net difference has to be positive, not negative. So the way we do see this from a reward and loyalty standpoint is that this technology, blockchain that gives rewards as DigitalBits blockchain, is designed to reward the community, to reward the consumer, to reward the brands that use the technology for having a net benefit, the net economic benefit at the end. And how we do it? So in the engineering of this, every reward should provide a benefit to the value of the technology. So, and this is achieved throughout more sophisticated mechanism. But the principle is that people that use this technology should be rewarded because they increase value of the technology.
Right. So the value increase comes directly from like, usage and stuff like that. Games may give out free stuff and then more people play the game at a certain time and that game kind of atmosphere or the competition increases. So in these kind of branded scenario, there are certain aspects of brand loyalty program that seems that they're very siloed, like each brand kind of build their own loyalty and kind of in competition with each other. They could also be sharing a ledger. Let's say they use a common wallet and stuff like that. What do you see is that kind of the ecosystem benefit when one brand brings in users, or if a user use one thing? What is the kind of like a propagation of benefits that you're seeing?
To me, this is a challenge to do something more by, I would say, discontinuing the legacy thinking of how, legacy, so reward and loyalty program works. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say the air miles for the airline companies.
Sure,
So
yeah.
what is the main benefit for them? So they want to drive brand loyalty. So if I am a brand A and I give loyalties, I give loyalty because I want my consumer to stay within my umbrella.
Yeah, book your airline every single time they fly the same route with competition.
Right. So this means because I'm going to use these miles to fly with the same company. So the concept is to create stickiness with the loyalty concept. So with this model, so we tackle the problem at the end and we say, let's create an environment where all brands can interact. And essentially there is liquidity that can be used to exchange point A with point B, which kind of breaks this barrier of this status quo thinking, okay?
And airline alliances do that. Like they can book each other's unused flights and stuff like that.
Imagine you have an alliance where all the brands, no matter which industry they are, they can exchange their loyalty rewards and loyalty points. At the beginning, if you keep the status quo thinking, it might not be a good thing to do because someone perceives a reduction of value. You have to think in the long term because brands are forced to redefine how loyalty programs work, creating a kind of a concept of scarcity and we call it privilege and access. So this means we do see this as a challenge to diversify the way they grant loyalties in a branding fashion. This means brand A loyalty point are different than brand B loyalty point. Sure, we can exchange, but there will be a kind of a trade value or market value, which correspond to the value that consumers perceive. So I think by doing this way, we will open up a way bigger market and will increase the value of each loyalty point overall.
There are these kind of chunky conversion ratios that, this credit card point is 1-to-1 exchangeable, some of them 1-to-5. So in a non-real-time way, there is some perceived values. If a brand dilutes its points, then it becomes less valuable to a trading partner.
Exactly, which goes exactly into this direction. You use the keyword, which is diluting. And that was exactly what I meant before, saying you just reward, and then essentially you dilute in value. But the moment you counterbalance these dilution effects with something more, so something more, in the case of DigitalBits project, we just launched a staking program, and I just give an example to explain the mechanic, not to promote this, because by any means this is kind of financial advice. So we just launched a staking program, which essentially reward users. They're using an application and they keep custody of coins within this application, which is a non-custodial wallet, which is called Cardstack. So users are being rewarded because they keep custody of the funds over this piece of software, which is a wallet. And they're receiving the rewards, essentially dilute the value of the reward, okay? So in order to counterbalance this effect, we will burn a corresponding amount of the value which is being provided. So by doing this, you correct this effect in order to create, I would say, a deeper, scarcity in brackets, which balance in overall terms the reward effects and increase the value creation out of this campaign. The more rewards, the more scarcity in a way, so the more economic net value output it counts.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You were mentioning like this idea of having to kind of burn it. The way airline burns the mile is that they burn gasoline in a flight of which there's a seat, and they give you the seat, and they can burn the miles when you go in that seat. So there's a consumptive use, right? So in a loyalty regime, what makes it interesting is that certain things that's really desirable, it's hard to redeem with loyalty points.
Yeah.
But a hotel room in an off night, a weeknight, or something like that, that's usually where they say, oh, for 10,000 points, you can get a night here. So, when you're working with brands as real consumptive use cases, it could be airlines, it could be hotels, it could be maybe, brands that has physical goods, that has unsold goods or something they would otherwise discount. Are you seeing that the brands are looking at the redemption around places where there may be some oversupply? Could be tickets that's not sold in an event, because those things are otherwise wasted, right? Like, yeah. I'm sure brands, especially luxury brands, sometimes would reduce the amount of secondhand markets on unsold goods and don't really want to flood the market with unsold goods. I've heard stories that luxury brands destroy goods to prevent for the dilution that you talked about. Yeah. Do you see that as a kind of counterbalance to the supply, which is the loyalty point, and the demand here would be the actual goods and services?
I think these, I would say the tokenization of the loyalty point will force people to think in a different manner, because here we have a programmatic environment where, first of all, you have an effective tool to balance the the dilution effect. And if you, I'm asking a very simple question. Let's say you look at the brand A, and if I'm asking you how many points this brand has ever granted, and how many points more they will grant, no one can really say. Yeah. There's no, I would say, framework with saying, hey, I have these points to reward, and that's it. When this is over, it's over. Or eventually, I will enter into circulation certain amount of points over this period of time. Yeah. The key point here is creating a framework, a blueprint for brands to force thinking in a way to increase value over time, because people perceive a value. There is no longer, there's subjectivity here, yes, but at the end of the day, I think the main innovation into this field is that we come with a framework, and this can be expanded at will for any brands of the world.
Yeah. I think the perceived value in terms of understanding how many there are, gives a sense of scarcity. For me personally, the redemption value is pretty hard to hide from. There are around the airline points and hotel points, there are blogs like Points Guy, which will kind of, in a way, qualify how much a point is worth by some analysis. And again, it's a tutorial. But that's the best we've got. Like, we got people making qualitative judgment and providing quantitative suggestion, but certainly, and that's helpful to me to know how much is this credit card point worth, because everybody can give 1.5x point, whatever it might be, but some points are worth more than others. So it's interesting to see how, in the absence of this framework or this technology that makes it much more transparent and visible, that people are trying to, through journalism, basically, by another way, try to make the current world slightly more understandable.
Yeah,
but it's certainly still very opaque.
Yeah, but here you can create a kind of let me call it secondary market, where people can freely decide on the market using, for example, a decentralized exchange. Yep. They can decide to trade point A with point B, and the market will define the price.
Yes. Yeah, and then that will be less chunky than the one-to-one offer that you should never do, because once you go to the other side, you can't come back and you can't get much more value for it. It's really interesting to look at the international market. Sometimes you see different currencies being priced for hotel room, but then the consistency, if you use a Hilton point, is pretty consistent. So sometimes it's actually a better user experience to use the point system, and sometimes that you get ahead. Sometimes I got to say, I, in my head, calculate how much is the point roughly worth, and is this hotel room in the redemption more expensive or cheaper than buying it in cash. Sometimes the point redemption is so bad that you should just buy it in cash, and sometimes it's so good that you should definitely use your points. So that type of things is because there's a inefficiency in the exchange rates. So that the redemption becomes where you do the adjustment. But if there's a clearer definition of the exchange rates, then those things will converge a lot better, right? Because there will be a market price that's been struck.
This is to me, this is a natural enhancement of the experience. So obviously, we cannot really make the assumption that everything is wrong. This is good, and all the rest is not. So that's not the case. So loyalty point works really well. So, but this is a kind of an enhancement from an experience standpoint that redistributes value because there's more value. And that's it's kind of it forces stakeholders to think in a way that if today the market works 10, let's work together to have a market worth 50 and redistribute the value to those that contribute to the growth of the market.
That makes a lot of sense. So, as an ecosystem, you have different organizations kind of adding value to it, and some of them are striking partnerships and brands. Are there some that are like really interesting to you that you want to highlight as far as like brands who have a unique way of like applying this technology to their particular industry and use case that you can kind of point us to us?
I mean, I just make the example of one brand which has integrated DigitalBits technology as a payment in the retail store. It's called Doppelganger. They have 120 retail stores in Italy, and they have some abroad. So in fact,
what do they sell? What goods do they sell in the store?
What they sell fashion.
Oh, fashion.
Okay. Fashion goods. So, and their primary goal was to, mostly address the brand experience component using the Web3 payment and test whether the Web3 payment gets a better experience and eventually attracts more tech-savvy users and potentially higher value users, which effectively was what happened. So in fact, simply by adopting cryptocurrency method of payment, which is very innovative because number one, they don't pay any processing fee. So by the time the users pay with DigitalBits coin, they don't pay any processing fee, the so-called payment processor fee.
Yeah,
so credit
it's
card,
1 to 3% depends on where you're in the world. Yeah,
that's correct. So, and that's one aspect. The second aspect is that the consumer, they receive an immediate crypto back of 10%. So this means they pay, let's say, €100. They want to buy a good, whatever the good is. And they decide to pay with this wallet, with DigitalBits coin. And this wallet, allow them to pay on-chain with a corresponding amount of coins that the point of sale, the device, the POS terminal, will display via a QR code or via, so they pay, transaction is settled, and so Doppelganger doesn't pay a processing fee. The consumer receives 10% back in the wallet in crypto. And last but not least, the brand, in this case, the merchant, has the freedom to decide whether they want to receive a crypto or fiat. So, and in this case, Doppelganger receive a euro. This means transaction is settled on chain. The processor deal with the exchange. There's no volatility risk for the brand.
Right.
And the brand and the merchant receive fiat money. And all of this is done in less than 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think of like sometimes even the native currency of a chain as a type of reward token, right? Because if we think about Bitcoin as an example, the miners for security work is getting rewarded. And how amazing would it be for the users who are actually using the digital currency, who are driving the adoption and buying some scarf from a store to actually be rewarded on that budget that would have been going to security. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just saying that the design space is wide enough that if you reward different people, it's like what is blockchain, but new playground for coordination. It's like, does it make sense to reward the consumer for adoption, especially as we are so excited about getting more people to adopt it? Why don't we reward them directly versus miners or stakers? That's an interesting way of looking at it.
It all makes sense. It is important that this is very, very visible to consumers, because for any of us, 1, 2, 3 clicks more does not make a difference. But when you are in the store and you don't know what is this app and you're going to pay, so the store manager or the store assistants have 1 minute or even less to tell what to do, how to do it, and why this is good. So it's a very, very small period of time in which they have to explain the benefit very, very simply, and people should not even perceive whether this is a cryptocurrency, what is the technology in the back. At the end of the day, they do see the value of it is an app. So, and it's very simple. You have a kind of digital tokens that you buy straight from the app with a credit card or Apple Pay or Google Pay. You get the coins straight in the shop, and then you can pay straight in the shop. So, and once you do the first transaction, then you are in the system.
Yeah.
It's very simple from now onwards to make further transactions because, we think the most complicated part, which is the onboarding.
Right, exactly. I think, I use some of the branded application for like store currency, like Starbucks has a really big loyalty program in the Web2 or traditional space, and they're experimenting with the Web3 as a settlement. But from a consumer point of view, it's really good to be able to get a balance and then use it, buy whatever with a QR code. I think that experience is quite common now with in-store kind of single vendor Starbucks experience. In China and other places, WeChat served that purpose. Less so adoption within the US. I think people are still very comfortable. But the design space, if you look at the world kind of unevenly balanced, is definitely moving to the world of QR code, in some cases NFC, as a replacement for cards. So I think that it's just allowing the back end to be swapped out because the user experience in a mobile app is probably not too different.
Yeah, there are some countries, particularly, for example, the UK, which is very progressive when it comes down to adopting very innovative method of payment.
Yeah.
So in London, for example, it happens very, very often to have cashless store, which only accept credit card. And for them, it's pretty obvious that you pay either by NFC or a swiping credit card.
Yeah.
And it's very simple right now to extend the user experience from QR code to NFC.
Yeah.
That is not complicated.
Yeah. So as a way to kind of look at where this will lead us, obviously currency and payments is one of those low-hanging fruits that you would think that with Bitcoin being digital cash, that this type of adoption would have happened earlier within this 15-year evolution that we've been observing. It's still not quite in the mainstream. But I do think that with stable coins and, euros and maybe the UK trying to kind of look at the pound as a possible vehicle, as maybe other jurisdictions are hesitant for different reasons, that we will see that frontier being pushed. What kind of, where do you think this is going to go in terms of the adoption from a from consumer level? Do you think that this will continue to be like a brand by brand adoption where I use the Nike app here? Or do you see that there is going to be, because of, let's say, a digital euro or something like that, some more demand for settlement on the app in a more universal level? Do you see this kind of graduating beyond a enterprise adoption to more of a societal adoption? Or is it necessary for that?
Yeah, first of all, we are in an environment which is driven by network effect, because the adoption of these is not only B2B or B2C, it's B2B2C, it's both, actually. So this means you have distribution when you touch the B2B world, which is lower at the end, because the more B2B you bring on board, the more time it takes, and the more distribution you have underneath. But at the same time, consumers are ready to step into it. So we have different surveys in different countries, which says that about 1/3, that's the average, okay, across different countries, mostly in Europe and on the east side. On the US, it's a little bit different, but on average, we have 1/3 of the people in the concerned country which are okay, meaning are happy to explore payment with cryptocurrency. 1/3, so 30% plus of the people, which is a big number. If we would have asked 3 years ago, maybe it would have been 5%, 3%, 1%. So this means this is maturing. So definitely there is a need to address both, because with the timing, which might change. So consumers is ready, but consumer cannot jump unless there's no distribution.
That's true.
Infrastructure has to be ready. So the two phases will move in parallel. From a brand perspective, it's very important that there is an ecosystem already established with brands that already trust the technology, endorse the technology, because that gives confidence and trust.
Yeah.
So it's a multifaceted environment. But coming back also on the how-to, for me, I'm not a big fan of, specifically when we're driving a brand disruptive innovation, as in this case. I rather prefer to start from the hard issue, from the hard problem,
And
instead
what
of
is
from
the
the
hard
low-hanging fruit.
problem?
Well, the hard problem is the how-to, meaning the how-to means, and I'm not talking about the technology part. Technology, is ready.
Yeah.
There's no issue with that. The how-to is how a brand can redesign their brand experience, I would say, processes, in a way to capture value with something so different to what they used to do in the past. That's I would say, the hard work that we're doing at the moment. That's why when there is an integration of a crypto, DigitalBits with a brand, most of the focus is not on the technology. Technology takes a week or less to integrate on the back end and the front end. It's very simple. It's simple, not very simple. But so the processes that create peace of mind for consumers of brand to explain, to communicate, to simplify the perception of how you pay, what is the value add, that's the core of the things we're doing. It's much more marketing and PR than technology and all the rest.
And I think every maturing industry recognizes it's about marketing PR. I'm sure the same thing with cloud or something with like mobile devices is starting out as a breakthrough, and then after that is marketing, and even like, financing the phones and stuff like that. That becomes more important. Onboarding, backing up your things, switching devices, those kind of in-store experience become much more differentiated than whether you have a 12 megapixel camera or an 18 megapixel camera, right? So I think it's a good signal to see that the adoption is really gated by the end-to-end kind of CX or customer experience, and less about the actual technology implementation, as every mature industry would be.
I usually make an example, and which comes to my eyes continuously all along, which is a very famous musician was playing the violin in the New York tube station, and no one pay attention.
Right.
He's a world star.
Yeah.
He's a world star. If you put him in a context to shine, all people recognize the value of it. But if you use, in this case, it's a musician.
Yes.
If you put him without him noticing it, there's no value perception.
Yeah.
Same here. You might have exactly the same value in front of you, depending upon the context. You put this value, then you have a different perception and different behaviors.
Absolutely. And I think the context that you guys are driving is not that the blockchain or the technology is really about, this group of enthusiasts in Web3, but to say, hey, why do we put this technology, this violin, this player inside a fancy fashion store?
Correct.
Maybe that will feel different. And I think that perception,
Exactly.
that instant perception shift is the type of experimentation and experience that I think more blockchain projects. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of blockchain projects are still led by the technical founders, are still led by people who grew up kind of like with this blockchain decentralized movement, but doesn't really have experience to know that a lot of business is done outside of this particular technology, or even cloud technology was a relatively recent phenomenon. So
that's correct.
Not to say that they are laggards. I'm just saying that they are where most people are, and we should try to help them understand the technology and bring a new imagination, and then they will get us in return that context that is so important in getting understanding and comfort with the technology.
Yeah, perfectly right, Chris. So I think there are different visions here of the world. There are some projects that really address, business model in a kind of self-service mode, assuming that people will be fairly educated on technology and they will perceive value themselves because they do research and so on and so forth. The project that we're running is different. So because the goal is to have this project landing on the real world, and the real world is complex. People don't use technology because it's called blockchain.
Right.
People use the technology because it works okay, and because they trust and they have good feedbacks by peers and by people using it.
Right.
And that's the direction we are heading into. We do perceive there's a lot of work to be done to reposition the crypto industry in
For
the real
sure.
world,
Absolutely.
in the real world, so as people can trust this technology. And I'm not saying everything done so far is bad. It's great, but now this is evolving, and at least what we like the most is to create adoption and connecting this technology with brands and consumer in the real world in a meaningful manner.
Absolutely, and brands is where the consumer have the trust right now, and if we can earn the better the brand's trust of this new technology, and that connection expand that trust and permeates. Right, trust is transferable and transmutable. If you trust a friend trusts someone else, you're more likely to trust someone else than someone who you're not connected in some way. So at the end of the day, it's a network, right?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. Think about you use WhatsApp, I imagine,
for sure,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, how did you, if you remember, do you remember why you have downloaded WhatsApp?
It's one person say, I use WhatsApp, you should use it too, right?
Perfect.
Scroll down all the way to the bottom and see who is the first person who messaged you, and that's where the extension of the web of trust came from.
Exactly. They were viral. They have leveraged perfectly the network effect power. Same here. You don't have to do, from a marketing and PR standpoint, you don't have to explain in big, bold headlines. This is why you have to use this technology. Eventually, this might be a side story for mainstream audience and mostly for institutional audience. But when it comes down to consumers and brand, there has to be an immediate sense of urgency that is being driven for the benefit of the business model we're driving.
It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot more experimentation to come, and if people want to follow the journey that your ecosystem bringing, how do they get updates?
I would say, it's the main channel of communication. It's Twitter. So this project communicates in a very Twitter native language. And obviously there is a website which gives a kind of an overall perspective of the project. But the main channel of communication is definitely Twitter. There are other channels, but Twitter is the main.
Sounds good. Well, Daniele, thank you so much for your insight. This is really important that we think in terms of the real world that we want to permeate to. I always say that it's very easy to think about Web3 as its own little island, but it's true. What it really is that we have a new technology that we're going to import to the world that people already live in, the web. Like we're adding a dimension to the web versus creating a isolated new thing where new web happens, but it's not connected to the rest of technology, cloud, and brands, and retails, and customer experience, and point of sale. Those are all places where people do things, and we want to bring our technology there. So thank you so much for giving the insight of what direction we're going, and more importantly, how that value of trust and that value of being acknowledgement of the building of that trust network is such an important part of unlocking the true value of Web3 and technology around that. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And in all ways, we thank our community for your support and your attention. We bring builders who are at the forefront to tell us how they believe that this transformation is happening on the ground, not just in the future, but currently. And obviously, our imagination of how this decentralized future can improve lives and in businesses and the outcome for all. And as always, until next time, take care.